the steel trembles. Pacific swells crash against the hull. USS Essex cuts through water like a blade through fabric. Her engines push 27,000 tons of warship toward a destiny that will change everything. Aviation mechanic Everett Red Landman stands on deck. His boots feel the vibration of 4 massive turbines. The American coastline has vanished behind them. Somewhere ahead lies combat. Somewhere ahead lies history. 2,000 miles away, different calculations unfold. Admiral Jisoburo Ozawa spreads intelligence photographs across his desk. American shipyards work around the clock. Essex-class carriers roll down slipways like cars from assembly lines. 24 of them, the reports indicate. Ozawa's weathered hands trace ship silhouettes. A thin smile crosses his face. Let them bring their factory-fresh vessels. Numbers alone decide nothing. Victory belongs to skill. Victory belongs to experience. His staff officers lean forward as he speaks. These Americans rush ships into battle. Their pilots train hastily. Their crews lack proper preparation. Meanwhile, Japanese naval aviators represent decades of rigorous training. These are the same pilots who struck Pearl Harbor. These are the men who dominated the Pacific for 2 years. Morning sunlight reflects off Essex's flight deck. Red Landman secures another F-6F Hellcat. Its 6 50-caliber machine guns gleam ready for combat. He doesn't realize he's working on the weapon that will destroy Japanese naval aviation forever. Essex-class carriers aren't just ships. They're floating fortresses of destruction. Each one carries 90 aircraft into battle. Each one houses 3,000 men. These aren't ordinary warships. These are cities designed for warfare. Essex steams toward her first combat mission. Ozawa continues planning what he believes will save the empire. His strategy appears elegant. Land-based aircraft will weaken the American fleet first. Then his carrier forces will deliver coordinated strikes. These upstart Essex carriers will sink beneath Pacific waves. Neither commander understands what's about to unfold. The most lopsided naval aviation battle in history approaches. Americans aren't just bringing more ships. They're bringing a completely different approach to warfare itself. Japanese pilots complete 6 months of training before combat. American aviators spend 2 years mastering their craft. Japanese carriers prioritize offensive power over defensive capability. Essex-class ships are armored fortresses designed to survive anything enemies can deliver. One question will haunt Admiral Ozawa forever. How do you defeat an enemy who builds 24 aircraft carriers while you train a single pilot? Red Landman finishes his work and heads below deck. He has no idea he's about to witness the systematic destruction of Japanese naval power. Essex steams toward collision with history. Japanese naval aviation will never recover from the impact. Industrial revolution transforms everything before any battle begins. Admiral Ozawa studies aircraft numbers and pilot experience. American shipyards rewrite the rules of naval warfare completely. Newport News echoes with riveting guns 24 hours daily. Philadelphia workers labor in 3 shifts. Brooklyn yards launch carriers ahead of schedule. Each Essex-class carrier requires 2.5 million man-hours to construct. American workers complete them in 14 months. USS Yorktown, named for the carrier sunk at Midway, slides down ways in January 1943. 3 months later, USS Lexington follows. By summer, Essex herself stands ready for combat. Ozawa interprets intelligence reports through Japanese naval doctrine. Quantity over quality, he dismisses to his staff. They rush these ships into service with inexperienced crews. Undertrained pilots fill their squadrons. We'll destroy them individually. What Ozawa cannot understand escapes Japanese leadership completely. These aren't simply more carriers, they represent evolutionary leaps in naval technology. Each Essex-class ship displaces 31,300 tons fully loaded. 4 inches of special treatment steel armor protect vital spaces. Their flight decks handle 2 squadrons spotted for takeoff. A 3rd squadron warms engines on the hangar deck below. Most critically, they carry 240,000 gallons of aviation fuel. Enough for extended combat operations that will exhaust Japanese defenses completely. Red Landman discovers Essex's capabilities during March 1943 shakedown cruises. Captain Donald Duncan puts the ship through rigorous paces. Landman watches F-6F Hellcats launch from steam catapults, carrying bomb loads impossible on earlier carriers. These new fighters outweigh Japanese Zeros significantly. They're also faster, better armored, and equipped with devastating firepower. 6 50-caliber machine guns can shred lightweight Japanese aircraft instantly. These planes are built like tanks, Landman tells his crew chief. His hand runs along a Hellcat's reinforced wing. The Japanese have never encountered anything like this. Meanwhile, desperate shortages plague Japanese training facilities. Experienced instructors are too few. The Imperial Navy graduates pilots after 6 months of inadequate preparation. Lieutenant Saburo Sakai, one of Japan's top aces, watches green recruits struggle with basic formation flying. A chill of premonition runs through him. These boys aren't ready for combat, he confides to fellow pilots. But what choice remains? American preparation follows completely different patterns. Pensacola and Corpus Christi train future carrier pilots for 2 full years. They log hundreds of hours in advanced fighters. They learn not just to fly, but to think tactically in combat situations. They practice carrier landings until they can land on pitching decks in any weather. Most importantly, they train against realistic opposition. Instructors push them to their absolute limits. By August 1943, the disparity becomes clear to anyone willing to see it. Essex launches her first combat mission against Marcus Island, a relatively minor target chosen specifically to test new carrier capabilities. Results prove devastating for Japanese defenders. Wave after wave of Hellcats and Helldiver bombers pound the island's airfield. Every aircraft on the ground is destroyed. Defensive positions are demolished with surgical precision. Admiral Ozawa reads Marcus Island battle reports with growing unease. Americans achieved complete tactical surprise despite Japanese radar warnings. Their pilots flew with precision and coordination suggesting extensive training. Most troubling, they suffered almost no losses while inflicting catastrophic damage on Japanese forces. But Ozawa pushes aside his doubts. Marcus Island was a minor engagement, he tells himself. When the main American fleet ventures within range of Japanese land-based aircraft and carrier forces, outcomes will be very different. His plan remains sound. Lure Essex carriers into a trap where they'll face coordinated attacks from multiple directions. What Ozawa doesn't realize is that American intelligence has broken Japanese naval codes completely. Every message he sends lands on Admiral Raymond Spruance's desk within hours. Every operational plan he develops is analyzed by American staff officers. The Americans aren't walking into a trap. They're preparing to spring one of their own. Red Landman feels tension building as Essex steams toward the Mariana Islands in June 1944. The ship's ready rooms buzz with intelligence briefings about Japanese fleet movements. Pilots study photographs of enemy carriers. They memorize silhouettes and capabilities. In the hangar bay, mechanics work around the clock. Every aircraft must be combat-ready. The morning of June 19, 1944, dawns clear and hot over the Philippine Sea. On Essex's bridge, radar operators track Japanese aircraft formations approaching from the west. Massive raids represent the cream of Admiral Ozawa's remaining pilot strength. This is the moment both sides have prepared for. The decisive carrier battle that will determine control of the Pacific Ocean. Admiral Ozawa stands on his flagship's bridge. He watches his aircraft disappear toward the horizon. He's committed everything to this attack. 474 of his best remaining pilots flying against what he believes are inexperienced American defenders. Victory here will cripple Essex carriers. Japan will gain breathing room to rebuild naval forces. Neither Ozawa nor his pilots realize they're flying toward the most lopsided aerial massacre in naval history. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot is about to begin. Japanese naval aviation will never recover from what happens next. Dawn breaks over the Philippine Sea on June 19, 1944. Admiral Ozawa's voice cuts through humid morning air on his flagship's bridge. Launch the first raid. 69 Japanese aircraft lift off from his carriers. Fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes form up at 20,000 feet. Ozawa watches them disappear toward the horizon. The satisfaction of a chess master making his opening move fills him. But 150 miles away, Lieutenant Joseph Eggert sits before the most advanced radar system in the Pacific Ocean. USS Lexington's Combat Information Center hums with electronic precision. Green blips appear on his scope, a massive formation of incoming aircraft still 90 minutes from contact. "Hey, Rube," Eggert barks into his microphone. The old circus cry for help echoes across every Essex-class carrier in Task Force 58. Engines roar to life. More than 200 F-6F Hellcats scramble from flight decks. Their pilots are grim-faced and ready. Red Landman watches from Bunker Hill's hangar deck as fighters streak overhead in perfect formation. These aren't desperate, hastily trained pilots Admiral Ozawa imagines. They're veterans with 2 years of intensive training. They fly aircraft that outclass anything in the Japanese arsenal completely. First contact comes 55 miles from the American fleet. Lieutenant Commander Charles Brewer of Essex locks onto a Japanese formation leader at 800 feet. He opens fire. His 50 caliber machine guns tear through the lightweight Zero's fuselage like paper. The Japanese pilot never knows what hits him. His aircraft simply disintegrates in a ball of flame and aluminum debris. Brewer barely has time to register his first kill before lining up a second target. Another burst of gunfire, another Japanese aircraft spinning toward the ocean. Then a third. Within minutes, he's downed 4 enemy planes, while his wingmen account for 3 more. This scene repeats across the sky as American pilots encounter Japanese aviators who simply aren't prepared for modern combat intensity. The Japanese formation should have maintained tight discipline and coordinated attacks. Instead, it fragments into individual aircraft, trying desperately to reach their targets. Aboard his flagship, Admiral Ozawa receives increasingly frantic radio messages from his pilots. "Heavy fighter opposition!" screams one voice. "Can't break through!" shouts another. Then silence as American Hellcats methodically destroy his carefully planned raid. Lieutenant Stanley Veitasa of Lexington becomes the day's highest scorer. He shoots down 6 Japanese aircraft in a single engagement. As he lines up his first target, a dive bomber approaching at low level, he radios back to his carrier. "Don't see how we can possibly shoot them all down. Too many." But that's exactly what happens. The Japanese formation, trained to fight individual duels against maneuverable opponents, encounters a wall of heavily armed American fighters that tear through their ranks with mechanical precision. Veitasa splashes 5 dive bombers in rapid succession. His aircraft shudders under the recoil of 6 50-caliber machine guns. The few Japanese aircraft that survive the fighter screen face an even more terrifying challenge. Vice Admiral Willis Lee's battle line of battleships and cruisers unleashes defensive fire. American gunners create a curtain of anti-aircraft fire so dense it appears solid. 5-inch shells with proximity fuses explode in perfectly timed airburst patterns. They create a killing field no aircraft can survive. On Lexington's bridge, correspondent Noel Bush watches in fascination. Tracers from 2 cruisers seem to grab a diving Japanese bomber like 2 arms reaching up. The aircraft simply disappears in a violent explosion. Its fragments scatter across the ocean surface. Admiral Ozawa's second raid fares even worse. 128 aircraft launch from his carriers. 8 must return immediately due to engine problems. As the formation passes over his own advance guard, trigger-happy gunners mistake them for American attackers. They shoot down 2 more Japanese planes while damaging 8 others so severely they can't continue. The remaining aircraft encounter the same buzzsaw of American fighters that destroyed the first raid. This time, Lieutenant Don Gordon of Lexington demonstrates the technological gap between Japanese and American naval aviation. Spotting 4 Japanese torpedo bombers flying at 15,000 feet, he ignores their Zero escorts and dives straight into the formation. Gordon's first burst of gunfire sends 1 torpedo bomber cartwheeling into the sea. He pursues the others as they take evasive action. He methodically shoots down 2 more aircraft, while American anti-aircraft fire from ships below creates towering waterspouts around him. The 4th Japanese pilot, apparently having seen enough, flees toward the horizon. By 11:30 a.m., Admiral Ozawa's first 2 raids have been annihilated. Of 197 aircraft committed to battle, only 31 returned to their carriers. The Americans have lost exactly 22 planes, most to operational accidents rather than enemy action. But Ozawa refuses to accept the evidence of disaster. He launches a 3rd raid of 47 aircraft, then a 4th with 82 planes. The results are catastrophic. More than half the pilots in the 3rd raid become lost and never find the American fleet. They return to their carriers without having fired a shot. The 4th raid flies directly into American fighters over Guam. 30 Japanese aircraft are shot down in a matter of minutes. Red Landman watches the aftermath from Bunker Hill's flight deck. American pilots return from what they're already calling the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Hellcat after Hellcat touches down with victory rolls and triumphant radio calls. One pilot yells to his wingman, "Why, hell, it was just like an old-time turkey shoot down home." The phrase spreads across the fleet within hours. In a single day, Admiral Ozawa has lost 374 of his 430 carrier aircraft. The cream of Japanese naval aviation destroyed in 4 waves of systematic slaughter. His remaining carriers steam back toward Japan as hollow shells, their flight decks empty, their purpose negated. But the day isn't over. At 3:32 p.m., a spark ignites aviation fuel vapors aboard Ozawa's flagship Taiho. The massive explosion tears through the carrier's hull. Within minutes, she's sliding beneath Pacific waves. 1,500 men go down with her, including many staff officers who planned this disastrous battle. An hour later, the veteran carrier Shokaku, survivor of Pearl Harbor and hero of early Japanese victories, takes 4 torpedo hits from American submarine Kavala. More than 1,200 men die as she follows Taiho to the bottom. Admiral Ozawa, rescued by a destroyer, stares back at oil slicks marking his sunken flagship. In a single day, he's lost 3 aircraft carriers, nearly 600 aircraft, and over 3,000 men. The American Essex carriers haven't suffered a single major hit. The Battle of the Philippine Sea is over. Its significance extends far beyond immediate tactical results. Japanese naval aviation, the force that terrorized the Pacific in 1941 and 1942, has been destroyed as an effective fighting force. The pilots lost today cannot be replaced. Experience and expertise accumulated over decades of training has vanished beneath Pacific swells. Admiral Ozawa writes in his flag log that evening, "Surviving carrier air power, 35 operational aircraft." It's the epitaph for Japanese naval aviation. It's the birth certificate of American naval supremacy in the Pacific. Essex-class carriers have passed their ultimate test. They faced the best Japan could offer and emerged victorious through superior technology, better trained pilots, and overwhelming industrial strength. From this moment forward, the Pacific belongs to America. Morning after the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot brings different challenges. Red Landman stands on Bunker Hill's flight deck, watching the sun rise over a fundamentally changed Pacific Ocean. Wreckage of Japanese aircraft still floats on the swells. Fragments of wings, cockpit glass, and life jackets tell the story of naval aviation's most decisive day. But for Landman and thousands of other Americans serving aboard Essex-class carriers, the real test still lies ahead. The Japanese may have lost their offensive capability. They're about to discover new levels of desperation that will push American naval defenses to their limits. 11 months later, on May 11, 1945, Landman works on an F-4U Corsair in Bunker Hill's hangar bay. 2 Japanese Kamikaze pilots sacrifice their lives in an attempt to sink his ship. The massive explosions kill 373 men and wound 264 more, casualties that would have sunk any lesser vessel. But Essex-class design philosophy proves its worth in the flames and chaos that follow. "We didn't have time to think about it," Landman recalls decades later. His voice remains steady despite the memories. "We lost almost 400 guys, but the ship, she never quit fighting." Bunker Hill's survival exemplifies the revolutionary durability that sets Essex-class carriers apart from their predecessors. While Japanese carriers prioritize speed and offensive power, American naval architects build floating fortresses capable of absorbing tremendous punishment and continuing operations. 4 inches of special treatment, steel armor, compartmentalized design, and redundant systems allow Essex carriers to survive attacks that would cripple other ships. Even as kamikaze pilots crash into Essex-class flight decks throughout 1945, not a single carrier is lost. Franklin suffers over 800 casualties when 2 bombs trigger catastrophic explosions among armed aircraft. She returns to port under her own power. Intrepid survives 4 separate kamikaze attacks, earning the nickname the Fighting Eye for her resilience. This durability reflects a fundamental difference in naval philosophy that Admiral Ozawa and his staff never fully understood. While Japanese designers focus on creating the most powerful possible attack platform, Americans build carriers designed to win prolonged campaigns through superior logistics and survivability. Each Essex-class ship carries enough aviation fuel, ammunition, and spare parts to conduct extended operations far from friendly bases. The Battle of Leyte Gulf in October 1944 demonstrates this strategic advantage on a massive scale. 4 Essex-class carriers, Essex, Franklin, Intrepid, and Cabot, participate in the largest naval battle in history. Their aircraft helped sink 26 Japanese warships, including the super battleship Musashi. Lieutenant Commander James Ramage, diving through heavy anti-aircraft fire to bomb Japanese carriers, watches his target burning from asshole to appetite, as his gunner so eloquently puts it. The sinking of Musashi, the largest and most heavily armed battleship ever built, by aircraft from Essex-class carriers, symbolizes the complete revolution in naval warfare these ships represent. Battleships, once the ultimate expression of naval power, have become targets for carrier-based bombers operating from platforms that can move faster and strike farther than any gun-armed vessel. By war's end, statistics tell a story of overwhelming American naval supremacy built on Essex-class foundations. 24 carriers completed between 1942 and 1950, participating in every major Pacific campaign from the Gilbert Islands to Okinawa. Their aircraft account for thousands of Japanese planes destroyed, hundreds of ships sunk, and countless ground targets neutralized. But the human cost of this technological triumph extends beyond American casualties to include Japanese pilots who died in hopeless battles against superior opposition. Many of these young men, some with less than 6 months of training, never had realistic chances of survival against American pilots with 2 years of intensive preparation flying superior aircraft. Essex-class carriers continue serving long after Japan's surrender. Their adaptable design allows them to operate jet aircraft during the Korean War and early Vietnam conflict. The last of the class, USS Lexington, doesn't retire until 1991, nearly 50 years after the first ship entered service. 4 Essex-class carriers remain today as museum ships in New York, South Carolina, Texas, and California. They stand as testaments to the industrial might that won the Pacific War. Red Landman, who survived Bunker Hill's Kamikaze attack and lived to age 100, represents the human face of this technological revolution. His Bronze Star citation reads simply, "For heroic achievement while serving aboard USS Bunker Hill during action against enemy Japanese forces." But the real heroism lies in the thousands of Americans who sailed these floating cities into harm's way, confident that American industrial might and technological superiority would see them through. Essex-class carriers didn't just win the Pacific War. They redefined what it means to project naval power across vast ocean distances. Today's nuclear-powered supercarriers trace their lineage directly back to these revolutionary ships that taught the world a simple lesson. In modern warfare, the nation that can build the best technology fastest will ultimately prevail. The question Admiral Ozawa asked himself in defeat, "How do you fight an enemy with such overwhelming industrial capacity?" remains relevant today as nations compete for technological superiority in an increasingly complex world. What do you think? Could any Navy today match America's Essex-class production miracle of building 24 fleet carriers in 8 years? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible stories of World War II's most decisive battles.